Today, we will look at how to use the best trading strategies for crypto and forex. And then we will look into sniper scalping as well as casual day trade entries. We will do a top-down analysis starting from hourly charts. After all that, we will focus on 30 minutes, 15 minutes, 5 minutes, and finally the 1-minute charts. This will be an extremely detailed trading video. Hope you do not miss it. If you're ready, let's start. Welcome our free trading course, all about price action trading strategies and smart money concepts. If you love scalping and day trading or even swing trading and looking for special trading strategies, check out my free trading course. You can find the links on Google Drive or directly from my website, which is in the description. Okay, let's talk about Bitcoin. What did I look for my trades? You already know that Bitcoin jumped from this hourly imbalance. But before that, let's check what happened. Notice this very strong break. Do you have any question about this break? No, right? How about the second break here? Very weak, right? Most likely liquidity sweep, a swing failure pattern here, which is also powered by hourly imbalance. My long-term concern was this open liquidity. However, since this is an hourly chart and I'm mainly a scalper around 5-minute time frames, those liquidity pools are not my first concern at this moment. Let's continue to dig the 1-hour chart. I love 1 hour because it reveals so much about the price. My latest range was like this. I was heavily concerned about EQ point when I identified the range. Why? EQ acts like a magnet and keeps pulling the price to itself. Bitcoin was doing its own very classic signs with liquidity hunts. Notice how it clears the liquidity at the range discount and fires up. Then hunts all the trend liquidity, fills the imbalance on the left, and sharply falls. Then double time liquidity hunt and fire up again, following simple liquidity and imbalance rubber ball pattern. Keep bouncing around. Before my trade, the latest sweep was here, with this giant wick, a classic liquidity sweep pattern. However, as you know me, I am never satisfied with a single confluence. And I like the layer system and find as much as confirmation possible before entering a trade. Let's observe this area on the left. See if we can find anything that supports our case. This is the 5-minute chart. The far left of the chart above the SFP. Let me observe it truly. First of all, I'm sure that you noticed these lovely open imbalances which are right before the break. And in the middle, this nice order block, basically an engulf pattern. You'll notice that actually every engulf pattern basically are order blocks. However, you can never use an engulf pattern to trade. It has to be in a meaningful location. And this is the hamburger pattern, because it looks like a hamburger, right? Just kidding. Now, let's see the right of the chart, right above the swing failure pattern. As you can see, the price eats all the hamburger, and it is all filled up now. Back to the 1-hour time frame. This is what you will see. Price hunt the liquidity, a swing failure pattern, fills all the imbalance in the 5-minute, drills into the engulf order block pattern, fair enough fill to move the price back into the range. Let's get back to the 5 minutes and focus on the chart again. Notice this internal break and this giant imbalance left behind. When I see these giant imbalances, I get really excited. At this point, you can do your further analysis by using your other tools like premium and discount or optimal trade entry. Remember, all these tools are optional. We only trade 3 things: structure, liquidity, and imbalance. Let's get even closer to my trade in 1 minute chart. Price again switches the structure here. Let me remind you what happened up until now. In 1 hour, price swept major liquidity and filled open imbalances. In 5 minutes, structure shifted with a giant imbalance. In 1 minute, structure shifted with small imbalances. These are enough confluences for me to enter a trade. What did I target? My main target was this open parabolic liquidity below. So this trade mostly ended here. It seems complicated, but once you get used to it, it will get much easier. Nowadays, I practice Forex a lot to improve my skills and enlarge my trading arsenal, mostly working on Euro USD and Pound Dollar pairs. In this 4-hour chart, you can obviously see that the price is very bullish and in a correction period at the moment. But if you look at this impulsive move, you can witness the bullishness of the price. Let's see what happens at the 1-hour chart now. Notice this lovely imbalance here, which also overlaps with this overall support and resistance flip area. Now getting even a closer look with the 30-minute time frame. The first thing you can easily notice is these equal highs and the nice large imbalance above it. Why do I show this to you? I want to prove that crypto or Forex or stocks, it does not matter. We always trade the same concepts and the same things keep happening in every asset class. Then notice this lovely trendline liquidity. Or maybe you can call it relative equal lows. Again, ironically, this happens right above a giant imbalance. What a coincidence. The moment I solve all of this, I notice reverse optimal trade entry setup. Again, remember, I do not trade ROTE. I only trade structure, liquidity, and imbalance. However, this ROTE guides me for future movement as a pattern, which is back tested millions of times. Let's have a closer look and talk about possible entries. Notice how the price sweeps the liquidity and breaks the structure, then shoots up. It makes this massive movement, which I love the most. Also leave this nice order block at the extreme with the mega imbalance. Let's zoom in this area with the 5-minute time frame and see possible entry models. You can notice the overall structure shift here. The only imbalance left was here, this very tiny one. Well, to be honest, finding these extreme sniper entry areas is not easy for most people. It requires extreme dedication and practice. This is why I say this. Just make your casual entry and do not worry, but cushion yourself large enough to devour the possible pullbacks. At the end, you can see both trades reach the target. Precision and sniping is not for everyone. Even myself, I do not wait for the extreme precision for each trade. After all, we are all here for a single purpose: to make money. Okay folks, another adventure ends here. As always, all these trading methods are suitable for scalping, day trading, or even swing trading. I believe that it will be really helpful in your trading life. I hope you subscribe to the channel and like the video. Thank you, please take care and see you soon.